All right, we're live here. I'm talking with Tyler, who I tweeted out before. I wanted to talk to someone who is a fan of Dave Rubin. And this guy volunteered, and he didn't seem completely insane. So I decided to pick him out to talk about the recent sort of Rubin controversy about the Mother Jones article and his political leanings and my whole fight with Rubin, my Twitter nemesis, Dave Rubin.
Seems so.
yeah, he's my bête noir on Twitter, but
everybody has their people that they want to that they hold close to their heart.
Yeah, well, he annoys me in a unique way. Maybe I paid too much attention to him, but I wanted to have a discussion about Rubin with somebody who had a different opinion on it and could sort of give a different, the Rubin fan take on it. And I could sort of get to the bottom of what they think. We could sort of go back and forth. We're not going to have a debate.
No.
I think we're just going to have a nice conversation, and I'm going to sort of give my point of view, and we'll ask each other questions, and we'll be very civil.
I like to be civil, and I think, first of all, I want to thank you for, responding to my, I responded to your offer, and then you responded to my willingness to do it. And I think, this is sort of what we need to be doing a little more, I guess, in some of these social media conversations you have on Twitter. I think it's good to sometimes maybe break it down and actually have some more of a long form discussion so that we can actually maybe accomplish something.
Yeah, I mean, people on Twitter sort of tends to reward just super negativity and short, curt thoughts, which can sort of lead people to be very angry at each other. But anyhow, let's sort of get to the root of the thing. So basically, the argument, I guess, that we sort of trace it back to is this guy wrote this article that said Rubin is part of this sort of growing far-right group on social media, on YouTube, who are catering to a very far right-wing audience and have very extreme views. And he included him among other people who are clearly alt-right, like this insane guy Baked Alaska and various other people. And Rubin responded to that by having a total meltdown about it. And he said, I'm a liberal, I'm a moderate, but I'm just, libertarian on some things. And he demanded they retract it, and he threatened to sue them. So what's your take on his political views and that article?
Well, I think the thing with Dave Rubin, being a guy who's been a fan from day one, I do contribute to his Patreon. I contribute to a lot of people's Patreon. I do, I think, $40 a month to a lot of different Patreons, because I believe that at the end of the day, we want to support people's whose voice we sort of not necessarily agree with, but at least we want to keep hearing. I think Dave is not lying when he talks about his political views. I don't believe that he is alt-right.
Okay, I agree with that. I don't think he is alt-right. I mean, he's Jewish, for God's sakes. Yeah.
I do think that based on some of your videos and that article, that he has given a platform for people who basically are the alt-right. And I personally feel the alt-right is this sort of shadow organization that I don't think a lot of people will have the same definition of who they are, but I definitely think people like Alex Jones, Cernovich, PJW, and Milo are sort of the most popular people that represent today's alt-right.
Well, let me sort of rephrase, because I don't like using alt-right necessarily.
Neither do I.
Because what it tends to do is you get back to like the most extreme version of the alt-right, which is the person who started it was Richard Spencer, who's a straight up white nationalist. He's extremely anti-Semitic, and you think of it just within that box. To me, when I think of what the article is talking about, it's not the alt-right necessarily. It's this rising populist right-wing movement that has a few different parts to it. It's anti-feminism. It's extreme aversion to, like bigotry towards Muslims and attacks on the religion of Islam. It's a lot of being super against the campus left and sort of demonizing left-wingers. And that's what I'm thinking of. And that sort of runs the gamut. You have the conspiracy theorists, you have Alex Jones, you have people like Cernovich, you have people like Handy buying into that a lot. So it's a pretty it's broader than just, okay, here's the Richard Spencer ideology broken down. And I think when it comes to that broader ideology, Rubin's show is part of that ideological movement, right?
Yeah, like I would say, like taking Richard Spencer out of the equation, Dave Rubin's show, at the way that it's happened, whether he intended it or not, because I do think there's a lot of sort of go with the flow happening with Rubin's show. I don't think this is what he intended originally. I think he did want to maybe have more people from the other side of the discussion or the debate.
Well, we can talk about his intentions. I think a lot of it could be just money. He found an audience and he's trying to milk.
That is part of it. But at the end of the day, you are right in the sense of that the people who he has put on the show and the people that obviously are bringing eyes to the cameras and money to Patreon are some people what we can only assume are part of this. Again, what we're going to be talking a lot about weird definitions in this discussion, but I mean this new right. Whether let's not use alt-right. It's the new right, a new right. You know.
Okay. Well, I think the handy way to look at it, like I sort of pay attention to this sort of like far right stuff, and if you find something that's often posted on like the Donald Trump Reddit page, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The people who are fans of these like YouTube people like Sargon of Akkad and those sorts of people.
So let's all break. I'll just sort of say, so me, I like Sargon of Akkad.
Really?
I do. And I don't listen to every single one of his shows. They're about like 18 to 25 minutes, but I do like I just like his form that he does it, where it's just literally just sort of talking. He doesn't really. It's not quick. It's not like Paul Joseph Watson, who I also don't detest. I like some of his videos. Ooh. I don't like any of his conspiracy stuff. I don't like his conspiracy stuff. I don't like his 9/11 truther stuff. I don't like any of the 9/11 truther or the Sandy Hook stuff that Alex Jones does. None of that stuff. But as a person who consumes, like we talked about before the interview started, I listen to Pod Save America. That's a left-leaning podcast. I listen to Ben Shapiro. I consume tons of different stuff. And I do like Sargon of Akkad. I don't like Cernovich in general, but he has made points that I did agree with, and he has been right on some things over the last year and a half.
Okay, but
I probably disagree with 80% of his stuff.
Okay, but like let's just go to Paul Watson, because that's one I know a decent amount. It's hard for me to know that much about Cernovich because he just disgusts me so much. But let's go to Watson. Okay. So to me, he has absolutely no credibility because he's a conspiracy theorist journalist who's written about 9/11 truth and chemtrails and
which is ridiculous.
Kanye West being the Illuminati. Yeah, to me, he's a complete charlatan and a fraud.
Yeah.
100%. And what he does is he found the Trump movement and he tries to make videos that sort of like, plug into what they want to hear. But like, if you treat him like he's a sane human being, like, I mean, he's actually a guy who didn't he tweet about Pizzagate? I mean, didn't he tweet about like the Seth Rich conspiracy theories? I mean, this is not a guy he is extreme, right? He is extreme. He's not a sensible person. He doesn't put out like well thought out, grounded in evidence ideas, right? And you look at his stuff, a lot of it is really demonizing people in an intense way when it comes to Muslims and sort of painting with this incredibly broad brush and being so sort of vitriolic about immigration and stuff like that. And he also does talk about, the Rothschilds, the Jewish bankers control this and it really feels like very strong like anti-Semitism. So this is not just a guy, or to me, this is a guy who's in that category, whether it's the new right, the alt-right, the bigger sort of group of people who are, I find it's an extremist movement. And the fact that you want to be associated with him at all, I find it just abhorrent. So like, what's your response to that?
Well, my response to that is, unfortunately, when you look at some of the videos, like, the truth, like he does these videos that like the truth about X, right? He'll do like I'm just going through the YouTube ones that are up there, like the truth about Marine Le Pen and the truth about the French election and the truth about, I'll just see here, the London terror attacks. Whether or not what's really happening in Sweden, a lot of times, just because the one thing I've tried to do is I've tried to not base my opinion on anybody based on one single thing that they do. Especially, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about people that do YouTube videos. A lot of times when he does these videos, I feel that he's presenting honest facts about certain situations that a lot of media don't talk about. And I do believe that the MSM, the mainstream media is a bigger problem because they're not willing to report the truth about a lot of these things. Now, again, I am not a 9/11 truther. I detest those videos. I detest all these conspiracy theories. But I don't think that every one of his videos is like that. Like when he talks about the YouTube channel, he talks about.
I saw you just. I saw you. That's like I got the tweet from you about that, and it came up in my feed. I saw this woman. She is incredibly anti-Semitic, and Patreon. I don't know. Just mention who it is. Is this woman a purposeful wife? Is that her name?
I don't know. I have to look at it here.
She's this person who's a Mormon anti-Semite, basically, and she's a white nationalist and a white supremacist, and just like the worst kind of person you'd ever want to see. And her Patreon page was deleted because she's a hate monger. She's like incredibly racist. There's not somebody in the mainstream of anything. This is just an awful person. And Paul Watson tweets out, "Oh, Patreon is they're going after the average nice woman, this nice Mormon woman." But no, she's like the KKK, basically. She's like Aryan nations, basically. And you're saying that, like, oh my God, this is the big MSM, the big corporations are going after the average person. No, they're going after people who are essentially the KKK or neo-Nazis. So, like, what's your response to that?
Well, in that particular one, I don't really have a response to that because at the end of the day, there's tons of people that have terrible views about lots of other things that don't get their stuff taken down.
But you tweeted about it, right? I mean, you're saying like lots of people have bad ideas, but this is someone you retweeted where you said, hey, this is bad that Patreon deleted this woman's Patreon, right? Or her account. It's bad that they deleted her account because whatever your reason was. But like, you're not just saying people in general have crazy views. You're talking about this one person. You're saying that you're essentially saying it was wrong what they did. So why do you think that?
Well, in that particular case, I would have to research a little more about why they put it. That was literally done like what I was waiting today to do.
Think about this.
Like we talked about before we got on the thing, a lot of times when I'm retweeting stuff, I didn't comment on it. I wasn't trying to say I completely agree with it. And I will, after this conversation, I will go back and look a little more. But at the end of the day, I do believe that there's a lot of things that are out there that don't get shut down, that should be shut down. A lot of things that do get shut down, just like Milo Yiannopoulos, for example. I'm not a fan of Milo Yiannopoulos, but I don't think he should have got banned from Twitter. I don't believe that. But that's my personal opinion about that. I think there's a lot of other people that are on Twitter that are doing much more terrible things than Milo Yiannopoulos was doing, and yet they're still able to be functioning on Twitter, which I guess that's the whole point about this Paul Joseph Watson. I think that what he does and why I think what he does, other than this conspiracy nonsense, and I'll reiterate that it's nonsense, I do believe that putting those other points of view that people don't agree with is important to think about.
Well, aren't there just thousands of people who are journalists and people with opinions out in the world who do a much, much better job and have actual credibility and have editorial standards and don't sort of blindly complain when a Nazi gets kicked off of Patreon? I mean,
okay, so that's an anecdotal example.
No, it's not anecdotal. No, it's not anecdotal.
Oh, okay.
His entire career.
No, I'm talking about my retweet of this particular one here.
Okay, but yeah, this guy, everything he does is shows a complete lack of journalistic ethics. He's not a real journalist. I mean, he's
not a real journalist, but I look at him as a journalist.
He has no connection to facts. He doesn't correct his facts. He puts out tons of conspiracy theories, tons of unverified information, and there are thousands of conservative journalists who do an immeasurably better job. yet you're following this guy because he'll say the most outrageous, ridiculous things, or whatever reason you follow him. And you're choosing, like Rubin is choosing to curate his group of guests to include this awful, crazy person and saying, well, everyone has different views. Let's have an open discussion. No, what I think people should do is they should look at things in a critical eye. They should evaluate all the facts about somebody and say, hey, is this guy sensible? Does he pay attention to the facts? Does he, is he empirically based? Is he someone who has a track record of credibility?
And I would say with a guy like Paul Joseph Watson, when he talks about things that, like, events that actually happen in the world, and when he does his videos about there, a lot of times he does have stats and truth and facts. And I feel that in people that are in your scenario are saying, well, because he's done something bad before and something that's reprehensible in saying things like conspiracy theories that have no validity to them, that you automatically will then say everything he does is not credible. And I don't think that's a good way to do any type of review with people.
Okay, well, let's sort of take it out of the politics realm. Like, if someone is a automotive journalist and they say, this Ford F-150, it gets 280 miles to the gallon, and they post a lot of information about cars that is completely inaccurate and not based in any sort of fact, and they do that for years, and all of their journalism about cars is wrong, and you say, who should I retweet about, the new, Tesla model? I bet it's not the journalist who's always wrong, right? So what I'm saying is, when you look at people like Paul Watson or Cernovich or whatever, and this applies to Rubin, look at them in a critical eye, evaluate all the facts, use your brain and think about it and say, this guy, he doesn't provide a lot of factual information. He promotes a lot of conspiracy theories. He's very hateful and racist in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to choose to listen to this guy, and I'm going to sort of shun him because he's part of this fake news industry, right? And if
I would say that I would say at this point in time, any media outlet has been part of this fake news.
No. Unfortunately, no. Whoa. This is a guy who's written about the Seth Rich was killed by Hillary Clinton's conspiracy theory, right? That's fake news. That's straight up fake news. There's no evidence behind it. It's complete bullshit, right?
I guess
that's a textbook definition of fake news. Now, does the New York Times do that? Does the Washington Post? Does the CBC? Does the BBC? No, they would never do that, right?
Well, they would not do. But the first thing is you're conflating the thing. He's not a journalist. He's not a type of person that's working for a newspaper. First of all, he works for Alex Jones. He works for InfoWars.
You're making my point for me.
No. But again, when we're talking about, when I'm on YouTube and I'm consuming stuff that I want to consume, I'm not going to it as a news outlet like I would the CBC or the BBC or CNN, though I don't really.
Well, okay. Well, let's go back to Rubin because that's sort of the topic.
Okay, yeah, we'll get back to Rubin here.
He has retweeted InfoWars, and he actually spoke about InfoWars and said they're needed because the mainstream media is so fake. The fake news media is so biased that they've created a space for InfoWars on the other side. And to me, that is completely illogical. I mean, just because one person has a small amount of bias or is wrong, it doesn't mean that somebody else who's on the opposite side is right. There is an ascertainable fact, like the Seth Rich story. There is an ascertainable body of facts about Seth Rich, and it's not like it's not like there's two sides to every single story. And when it comes to InfoWars, they have no credibility. And the fact that Rubin is promoting them as the antidote to whatever, latent bias is in the Washington Post, it's completely outrageous.
Well, I would say that, so I have heard you in a lot of your videos talk about Dave Rubin's support for InfoWars. As a person who watches Dave Rubin on YouTube and listens to his podcast all the time, I don't feel like he's out there truly, really, honestly promoting Alex Jones.
Well, no, he's doing it in a stealth way. He's doing it in a stealth way,
in a very, very, very stealth way.
Not a very stealth way. He's much more insidious than that. He's not saying that he's a supporter of InfoWars, but he's subtly tweeting out about it, right?
I think there's a little bit. I personally feel that if you're calling Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones conspiracy theorists, I sort of feel that the way that you're looking at Dave Rubin in his stealth support of it is almost a conspiracy theory, because there really is no evidence other than a few retweets.
He said it. He said, the mainstream media has created a space for InfoWars because...
Yeah, but that's not saying he supports InfoWars. What he's saying is, just like, for example...
He's retweeted Paul Watson.
Okay, so have a lot of people. He has 790,000 subscribers on YouTube, you know? And
that's an endorsement of his work and his credibility. And if you're endorsing somebody who has absolutely no credibility, who's on the far right, you're part of that general movement, right? I mean...
Well, yeah, like, I guess I look at it like when I look at a Paul Joseph Watson video, when I look at things when he talks about how the idiots react to the UK election, and he talks terribly about the Corbyn, the left-wing insane human that people wanted to get in there to be the Prime Minister of England. He talks about it in a way that's not, he's not lying about the situation there. He's not lying when he talks about why Sadiq Khan is a complete idiot. I don't necessarily always agree with everything he says, but what I guess my point in all this is, when you say that Paul Joseph Watson is not a credible journalist, let's say, and that Dave Rubin is stealthily supporting InfoWars, when he says the mainstream media has created a place for InfoWars, that's a condemnation on the mainstream media, not support of InfoWars. No, and let me finish my point now, then you can go right to it. It's sort of like after the situation last night where that crazy right-wing white guy drove into a bunch of Muslims in front of a mosque. Well, people can say that alt-right has made that person become the alt-right has made that guy go crazy. But in reality, the other side of this story is that, well, the fact that there's been dozens of terrorist attacks in Europe over the last 5 years have made him go crazy. That's not saying that you agree with what he does by saying that he did what he did because there have been terrorist attacks going on from the radical Islamic jihadists. That's the same thing that I feel that Dave Rubin is saying when he talks about InfoWars. He's saying the fact that the mainstream media, for example, was so wrong about the Trump election. Like you said in your video, you said 1/3 of people said that he had a 1/3 chance or a 30% chance to win, 33% chance to win. Well, that night, on every single media report that I saw, it was like 85% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And everybody was so wrong, and nobody took him seriously. And the fact is, because the media didn't want him to win, for good reason. For good reason. I'm not defending Donald Trump in that sense.
But let me just... Your point is so incredibly unprincipled. It's because someone else said something wrong, I don't need to get my facts straight. Because someone else might be a little bit biased, I can say...
What facts did Dave Rubin say that aren't true?
Well, if he said that there's a space for InfoWars, you're saying...
Because of the mainstream media not doing their job properly.
No, there's never a space for people who constantly lie and have no ethics, okay? It doesn't matter what anyone else says. But you understand my point here? I mean...
I get your point, but
there's no reason to pay attention to InfoWars because they are so unethical. And these are the same people. These people promoted the conspiracy theory that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax,
which I think is one of the most important things that
it's a disgusting thing to say. And
I think the worst.
I know a lot of people who've been victims of mass shootings, and to think about how the parents have to endure the InfoWars fans attacking them. If you know anyone who's lost a child, it's so incredibly disgusting. And
but just because
excuse me. Now, here's a parallel of your argument. Well, Trump is really crazy and Fox News is really bad. So I'm going to start listening to a Marxist-Leninist, or I'm going to start listening to Anjem Chowdhury because he's opposing Donald Trump. He's on the other side. So I'm going to start listening to these people who are completely insane, but they're on the other side, so it's kind of okay and it evens out. No, you have to yourself have principles and look at the facts and come to a conclusion on your own. You can't just say, the media was wrong about Trump, so I can say whatever I want. No, look at yourself and say, what makes sense? I'm going to be honest with myself and have some intellectual honesty. And that's what I don't like about Rubin. He has no intellectual honesty. He says, well, you know what? There are social justice warriors out there. So it's my side is the people who aren't social justice warriors. My side are the people who are the skeptic, rationalist, Sargon of Akkad types. And I will tolerate any kind of inanity, of racism, of conspiracy theories from those people.
So what I would say I think what could be an interesting sort of project that we could do, because I think this conversation is fantastic. I'm having a blast. But I think what would be a fun project to do is to take a few of these Paul Joseph Watson videos, the ones that I say I like, because I don't like every one of his videos, but there are some that I do think are honest and true. And I think that if we went through them and I could say, these are you tell me what is not true within the videos. And I think there is, just because somebody has said bad things before in the space doesn't mean that you need to not listen to anything that they ever say. When it comes to being
if
YouTuber, I'm not talking about President Trump.
If Paul Watson told me the sky is blue and gave me a picture with the sky being blue, I'd be like, yeah, that's kind of true. But his political commentary is so constantly wrong.
Well, I
feel like we've gone in circles, and I've addressed this. And
it's all good. I think
I don't think you're making a lot of sense on that one. But
I would say that if
let's sort of zoom out here. So
let's zoom out here. But I would like to one time come back to this Paul Joseph Watson, because I think we could do another discussion about, I could show you some of the things that I feel are valid points within his videos. And I would love to hear why you think they're not valid, but we'll get to Dave Rubin, because that's why we're here to talk about today.
Okay. So would you agree that his fan base and his show is catering to a lot of the same fan base as Molyneux, Cernovich, Sargon of Akkad, of that group of people, Gavin McInnes, the Rebel Media? Would you agree with that?
I can't really say. I would say that definitely.
He's a lot of the same guests, right?
I would say, yeah. I like Gavin McInnes.
Oh, okay.
I like Gavin McInnes. First of all, he's from Ottawa, so I sort of have a little bit of brotherly love for a local guy. But Vice Media started at Carleton University here in Ottawa, and then he went off to New York and did his thing. But I think Gavin McInnes is hilarious. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do think he's hilarious. I don't look at him to get my news about the media. I look at him as an entertaining person on YouTube. I don't listen to Molyneux that much. I don't really like him that much. I don't listen to Cernovich that much. I do follow all these.
Okay, but that's not the point.
So the question is, does the people who listen to Rubin Report follow them? I would say there's probably lots of people in his 180,000 or so. I don't know how many people he has on YouTube subscribers would also follow those.
Okay, but think about this.
I would say the people that I know that follow Dave Rubin aren't those type of people. They don't listen to those people.
Okay, but if you look at his list of guests, like if you think about having a talk show, right? You're curating a list of people, right? You can pick anyone to interview you want who will accept your interview invitation. And who you choose is your sort of roster of people that you think have a interesting points to make, and if you bring them on and you just give them a softball interview, you're basically
which he does. Yeah. We can both agree he's not hard pressing.
Okay. So if a lot of your guests are super extreme and are all extreme in that same space of the Make America Great Again, nerd kids who like the racist anti-Islam stuff and the Paul Watson, the InfoWars. If all the guests are extreme in that way, and you're curating that list of guests, and you bring them on, and you just basically give them you're like a tape recorder. You're just sort of giving them a nice massage.
So which ones do you think are those types of people that support racism and are the Trump lifers that have come on his show, other than the four people we've mentioned?
Okay, well,
I have a list here. So like Larry Elder.
No, Larry Elder is like basically a right-wing radio host, so he's kind of like a Rush Limbaugh or whatever. So he's
but I think Larry Elder. I think the interview. First of all, I think the interview.
Let's not get into a discussion of Larry Elder because.
Okay, what about Crowder?
Crowder, he is on the edges of that movement. He's also sort of a right-wing radio host, but he's not quite in.
He's not a Trumper.
I think he does support Trump in a lot of ways, but
he's not a Trumper though.
No, he wasn't a Trump supporter in the primary, I don't believe. So I won't totally include him. No.
So Shapiro's not a Trumper, but he's definitely a hardcore conservative.
Yep, he's another right-wing radio show host.
Yeah. And what about Horowitz? How do you feel about Horowitz?
Horowitz is he's kind of complicated because he did write that article about Bill Kristol that called him a renegade Jew. Mm-hmm. And he is, I think, vitriolic about Muslims in a way that I find really sort of racist and xenophobic and distasteful.
I agree with the fact that his opinion is different, but I'm not Jewish, so I can't comment. I don't know how I would feel if an ideology wanted to obliterate my people from the planet. So I don't like to speak on that personally. What about Lauren Southern?
Oh, she is full on alt-right, right?
I would agree that she is. She has a lot of the aspects of the alt-right, definitely.
Yeah. And
what about Prager and Beck?
No, they're also right-wing radio show hosts. So
so of the guys, so now there's 5 people we've talked about. Then there's a big group of people that aren't anything like those people. A large group of people.
Oh, he has a lot of interviews that are totally sort of benign, but he also has a lot of interviews. It's not just those people you mentioned. It's also let's see.
Was had Sam Harris on twice, and we both agree we love Sam Harris, and we think he brings a lot to these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Harris is fine, but he has a lot of people who are extreme libertarians, right? He's actually paid by this foundation.
I know all about them. Yeah, Love Liberty or whatever it's called.
Yeah, he's paid by this foundation, which is funded by Koch brothers money. So it's another strike against him in terms of his liberalism. He's not on the left if he's getting money from the Koch brothers. I sort of put that out there. But okay, here's the people who are the roaming millennial. This is a woman who's basically alt-right, soft alt-right.
I wouldn't call roaming millennial soft alt-right. I would consider right, but she's not alt-right.
She talks about globalists and stuff like that. So I think I don't want to get into. It's hard to keep track of some of these people, but I would say she definitely is on the alt-right side of things. He's had Sargon of Akkad on, right?
Yeah. And let's try not to use this alt-right because Lauren Southern, I'll say alt-right, but I think this roaming millennial would be part of this quote-unquote new right that we talked about.
Yeah, right? New right, she's somewhere on that spectrum.
Okay.
Jordan Peterson, he's basically like the public intellectual face of the alt-right. This is a guy
that I disagree. So see, this is an important one for me because
Jordan Peterson went on a neo-Nazi interview show recently, and he's somebody I can't listen to the guy because I find him so long-winded.
He's very long-winded.
It's hard to even understand what he's saying. He
gets off the beaten path very quickly, and
he complains about postmodernists not making any sense, and he is like the most postmodernist sort of seeming person I've ever heard give an interview. I heard him on the Sam Harris podcast.
Well, that was a nightmare.
It was soporific to say the least.
Yeah, that was a nightmare. But I believe
okay, but this seems like a pretty fruitful way to go through it. So
yeah, I think it's good.
His other guests, a lot of the people who are liberal, right? Like people like he interviewed.
Was it Ian Michael Black or something like that?
Well, he's a comedian. I don't really count him.
Okay.
David Sirota. He interviewed David Sirota, who's one of the most anti-Hillary Clinton people in existence on the left.
And I guess that's why I like him so much.
Oh my God. He brought on David Sirota to attack Hillary Clinton and said, "Oh, I have someone on the left." To me, that's really actually showing how you're actually kind of anti-Clinton, you're anti-liberal, you're anti-left. And that happens with a lot of his liberal guests. Like he'll bring on like an ex-Muslim who tends to be more liberal, but the reason he's bringing on an ex-Muslim is to promote an anti-Islam, anti-Muslim sort of spin on things.
Well,
so
I don't completely agree with that.
But that doesn't prove if you bring on Sam Harris and Sam Harris says, the left's out of control. I'm on the left, but the left is actually getting pretty damn bad.
But he hates Donald Trump more than anyone. And Sam Harris has been one of the most critical voices of Donald Trump in the space which we are in right now.
Okay. But if all the left-wing people you bring them on to have them attack their own side, you're actually you're not giving a megaphone to the left. You're giving a megaphone to some people on the left to self-critique the left. And if you look at all of his content, the whole sort of tenor of it is the left is bad. The left is authoritarian. The left is against freedom. And the way he talks about politics, it's basically a mix of this sort of soft peddling of Trump, like Trump's a centrist. He said that so many times. Trump's a centrist. Or it's the sort of Ayn Rand. I mean, this is a guy who's actually just at an Ayn Rand conference. It's like the Ayn Rand view of libertarianism, which is incredibly extreme, and it's right wing, right? So the whole tenor of his show, almost every single video to a point is promoting this big idea. The left is authoritarian. The left is anti-free speech. The left is bad. That's the message of almost every single interview. Regardless
then you're right. But at the end of the day,
I'm right on that point. So isn't that article that was written in Mother Jones kind of correct? Because he's interviewing all of the big names from this space, and he's basically promoting an anti-left-wing agenda with this show. That's like the mission statement of the Rubin report. So the article is kind of correct. Even if you do like Rubin, he is mostly his show is a critique of the left, and he brings on mostly people who are either right-wing radio show hosts, traditional conservatives, or they're liberals attacking the left, or they're full-on right-wing nutcases. So,
well, I would say the full-on right-wing nutcases are 10 to 15% of his guests.
Okay.
So then we have these people which, like Majid Nawaz and Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Sarah Haider and Ali Rizvi, who are extremely important voices who are talking against the left, but not from the perspective of the right. All those people are left people. And those people, which I just mentioned, the ex-Muslims, they're talking about the dangers of the alliance between the left side of the political spectrum and the more conservative line of Islamic belief. And I think that is not a right. Those people are not right wing. Just because people who are right wing support the message that those people are delivering, and the left, for some reason, which I think do agree, for some reason the left won't have that. I don't know if it's guts or they're not willing to say the truth. That's not promoting alt-right or new right. That is just not being a hardcore.
But it's not. It doesn't add any points to his liberal. It's not a left-wing thing to do. It's kind of neutral.
Well,
let's say it's kind of neutral. It's not ideologically one.
Because I believe I guess this is where a big difference, the way that we look at it, comes from, is that just because Dave Rubin isn't willing to just accept whatever the left tells him is left, or that, you have to support the Muslims because if you don't, then you're right. Well, that's the problem. And that's the way.
You want to rephrase that? Support the Muslims. Yeah, I mean.
Okay, support the.
Okay, let's sort of stipulate on something, because I think this is very important.
I agree.
Muslims get to believe whatever they want when it comes to freedom of religion, right? We live in free societies, and Muslims get to have freedom of religion. We both agree on that.
All people can choose whatever they want.
Right. We shouldn't discriminate against people. We shouldn't have like the Trump Muslim ban on Muslims coming into America. We shouldn't have this sort of. We should treat people as individuals. So if someone is a Muslim, let's not assume that they're supporting ISIS. Let's not make.
Of course not.
Let's not make negative assumptions about. No, this is very important. A lot of people are thinking that way, and they're exhibiting real bigotry and animus towards Muslims.
So let me pull it back a little bit, because I fell into that same word. I like Dave Rubin says, and like Sam Harris says, and like everybody says, I don't give a crap about what a Muslim believes, but that doesn't mean that I like the ideas of the Islamic ideology. Where I'm from in Canada, when I went to school, when it was Ramadan, a good 30 to 40% of my school was fasting. We had a very large percentage of an Islamic population at my school, and I have no problem with people that are Muslim. But the way that the ideology of Islam, like people like Linda Sarsour, who promote these things like the hijab as a symbol of female empowerment, is, I believe, to be abhorrent. And I believe that we talked about that before, that you don't support her perspectives of things. And the fact that she says that people like Ayan Hirsi Ali and the other lady that was on the Rubin report that I forgot, I can't remember her name, who's a right-wing ex-Muslim person, shouldn't be able to have their female genitalia because that's ridiculous.
Well, it's actually interesting you bring up Linda Sarsour, because I kind of see her as the left-wing equivalent of Rubin in a lot of ways, because she's somebody who is really a strident left-winger, but she's willing to ally with these people who are actually very, very conservative, fundamentalist Muslim preachers. Like, she spoke at this conference I saw from the Islamic Society of North America, and one of the preachers who was speaking with her at the, in this conference was actually the proprietor of the mosque in my neighborhood in Brooklyn. And this is a guy who's a Salafi, very, very extreme guy.
Yeah.
Very, very, he's not an ISIS supporter, but his mosque's website.
He wouldn't hate everything ISIS does.
Well, his mosque's website actually posted a video in favor of executing gay people after the Orlando attacks. So this is not a good guy. He said a lot of things about, like, it would be good if the U.S. government was destroyed and replaced with a Sharia government. This is basically a guy who's a fellow traveler with the very extremist Al-Qaeda jihadi sort of strain of Islam. And that's his right to believe, far extreme things. But she's sharing a platform with this guy the way that Rubin is sharing a platform with, Scott Adams and Lauren Southern and Gavin McInnes.
The difference is those three people are not saying gays should be thrown off of rooftops.
But they are espousing ideologies that are very, very far right and very extreme and have a lot of problems. But let's sort of rewind the conversation a little bit. But because you would say that Rubin would never have on, let's say, Noam Chomsky, and basically give him a very positive, nice interview about how great, anarcho-syndicalism is, right? He wouldn't do that.
If Dave Rubin asked Noam Chomsky to come on and Noam Chomsky agreed, I think Dave Rubin would be very respectful of Noam Chomsky and he would conversate properly.
Well, it's kind of interesting because Rubin actually invited a left-wing First Amendment lawyer from the American Secular Association or something. Mm-hmm. And they actually got into a real debate about gay rights and whether we should force Christian bakeries to provide their services to gay people. So when he does have a left-wing guest, he actually does debate them sometimes. But if you look at his guests, it's not an accident that almost all of his guests who are providing a real opinion are giving it as an anti-left-wing opinion. Whether they're doing it because they're self-critical and they're on the left, which is fine. I'm self-critical of the left a lot. I'm kind of center-left. I criticize the left. I criticize the campus left. I tweeted about the Brett Weinstein situation at Evergreen. I've tweeted about how I don't like Linda Sarsour and her sort of disingenuous sort of activism. So I'm not, a left-winger at all. I don't have a problem with being self-critical. But when you're only self-critical of the left, when you give a megaphone to a spectrum of the right, from far right-wing libertarians to traditional Republicans like Ben Shapiro, who's kind of right-wing Republicans like Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
And the extreme people like Southern, Paul
TJW,
Watson,
Milo Cernovich,
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The tenor of your show is that you're part of a far-right group of people. And that's why I thought the article was 100% correct, because that's what you're doing. And I think it's especially egregious because in the context of what's going on right now, because we have Trump in the White House, and Rubin is a complete apologist for Donald Trump. If you're actually a liberal, you actually believe in sort of whatever was like a mainstream Democrat in 1995, like he claims to be, you would be going absolutely bananas with the fact that Trump is in the White House and he's incredibly corrupt. His policies are incredibly right-wing. He's a disgusting human being. He's disgracing the office of president. He's committed high crimes and misdemeanors, trying to shut down an investigation into his campaign's ties to Russia. If you're actually a liberal, you would be going nuts about Donald Trump. And what has Rubin done? When Trump got elected, Rubin said he's actually a centrist Democrat, and he has never criticized Trump. He's criticized the critics of Trump. He hasn't necessarily, said MAGA, Trump's great, but he's criticized Trump's critics to an extreme degree. I mean, just for example, Rubin said the Democrats should really worry about investigating Trump for his Russia ties, because if we find out that he was colluding with Russia, we'll have to go to war with Russia, and that will cause a nuclear holocaust. So, his show, his media personality, the sum total effect of his show is right-wing. Can we agree on that?
I would say yes. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I guess the big issue that you have is that he says he's not right. So, and you think he is right.
It's incredibly dishonest. And I find it's especially bad because a lot of people are very impressionable. They're not necessarily very informed about politics. And they hear someone say, I'm a liberal, and they can sort of be confused about what ideas are being put forth. And they can be sort of lulled into the idea that, Mike Cernovich is a centrist, moderate, reasonable guy. And when he was on Rubin's show, he said, you're part of the new center. So I find his dishonesty especially bad, because his dishonesty is creating this ability to do propaganda and hoodwink dumb people into believing these very, very radical right-wing beliefs.
Listen, so here's the thing, though. The issue going on in with this whole Rubin debate is not the fact that he is left or right. At the end of the day, the article was saying he's alt-right.
It didn't.
It was implying it was, and it was disingenuous, and it was not full of honesty. The problem was that when people like that reporter comment that he is in line with those people, it's just not true. It's just not true. Just because he's had Cernovich and Paul Joseph Watson and Milo on his show, who are definitely, and Lauren Southern, who are part of the so-called alt-right, who you compare to an ideology that would almost support ISIS, based on what you said earlier. I don't agree that they're that bad. I'm not saying I.
Okay, but we were making some progress here. So let's putting aside how bad they are. The article did not say Rubin is a far-right, alt-right conservative. The article said that he was part of this general ideological movement. Your dog needs to shut up. But
just hold on one second. Just hold on 1 second. I'm gonna go put him away. Hold on 1 second. There's a squirrel in the backyard. Hold on. All right, sorry about that.
Okay, well, actually, let me pull up Josh Harkinson's piece, so I can. Well, I guess it's been edited a little bit since he wrote it, but to me, he didn't say what Rubin's beliefs were. What he did was that he said that he's part of the right's independent media. He's a right-wing independent media personality.
Which is fair.
Think you agree with that. That's it. Maybe he doesn't want to be associated with that, but it's a fair description, right? And he has featured Cernovich, Southern, and Yiannopoulos, right?
He has featured those people.
And I mean, another point I just thought of is that a lot of that Rubin's rise to prominence was his work with Yiannopoulos and his latching on to a lot of these people like the YouTubers who are super right wing and Cernovich and some of these. So
I would not agree. I would say the reason he got popular is because his first guest was Sam Harris. That's my opinion.
Okay, but part of his maybe that started the snowball rolling down the hill. But I mean, it makes me think Sam Harris should really apologize a little bit for doing this.
Well, Sam Harris has to apologize all the time. People think he's all right.
Well,
half the people.
He really.
So that was the point I was going to make earlier. Is that just because some people believe that Dave Rubin or Sam Harris are alt-right, they're obviously not alt-right. Sam Harris is not a racist. Sam Harris does not believe that Muslims as people should be treated like trash, even though he's against the Islamic ideology.
I wasn't saying anything about Sam Harris's beliefs personally, but I think that his association with Rubin and some of these similar people is it's hurting his credibility. And I think the fact that he hasn't apologized or he hasn't addressed Rubin and the sort of right-wing kick he's been on, especially while he's been.
First of all, I don't think he has to. Sam Harris doesn't need to apologize because, and I guess that's
that's sort of a side point. Let's go through the other mention of Rubin. Yeah. So the crowdfunding site Patreon has been more than welcoming to these voices. It now hosts Rubin, Cernovich, Southern, Baked Alaska, and a number of other lesser-known figures.
But like just throwing them into that right there is like immediately it's not true. It's not a lie, but it's disingenuous.
Well,
right. It's like again,
there's a list. There's a list of those people, and there's a spectrum, right? Like Baked Alaska is a full-on, basically a anti-Semite, a white identity.
I don't know much about him. I have heard him. I've never listened to him, so
I haven't listened to him much either, but I know he's a massive anti-Semite. So he's on the most extreme. So if I was Lauren Southern, would I want to be associated with Baked Alaska? Probably not. But they're part of a general, populist, right-wing, pro-Trump.
Do you think he's more right than Breitbart?
His show, I think it's.
Of course, it's not though.
But the title of the article says to the right of Breitbart, right?
Well, it did. I think isn't it called Cashing In on the Rise of the Alt-Right now?
Yeah, and that's a perfect description of what Rubin is doing, right? He is cashing in on this general movement, even though he's not necessarily like the central figure in it. He's within the general ecosystem. So to mention him as here's one guy on this side of the spectrum, here's another person on this side of the spectrum. He's in the spectrum, is my point. So
I would say he's.
And you know what? Here's the
argue he is, but I don't think he is.
Well, Rubin doesn't like the fact that he's being lumped in with these people. But in my mind, he lumped himself in with those people, and it reflects badly on him, so he doesn't like it. But he chose to, he appeared on the Stefan Molyneux Christmas special. Have you seen this?
I've never watched it. Like I said, I don't watch Molyneux, but I saw the list of all the people who was on it.
Yeah, it's Ben Garrison, the super insane cartoonist. It's Alex Jones. It's Vox Day, who's a complete white supremacist, like serious hater racist. Chuck Johnson, who's a right-wing troll and alt-right, cretin. He's terrible. Gavin McInnes, who he's sort of verged on Holocaust denial recently. And he's talked about how the Jews were part of the Treaty of Versailles that screwed over Germany. So this is a guy who actually does repeat like really anti-Semitic stuff. So Rubin went on his show. He went on InfoWars, the Alex Jones show. He chose to go on that show. Another show he went on was this woman, Libtard America. Her show is actually she's actually someone who has talked about the Jewish question. So she's a full-on white supremacist anti-Semite, and he's gone on her show. So what Rubin has done is that he said, I want Patreon dollars from every part of the right. I want the Shapiro fans. I want the Scott Adams fans. I want the InfoWars fans. I want, and and then when he brought those people on his show, like he brought Lauren Southern on his show, and he didn't say, hey, when you say identitarianism is a good way to go for white people, isn't that kind of against your belief that identity politics is terrible? He didn't ask tough questions of those people. So to me, he chose to lump himself in with those people, and it's accurate. So he has no basis to complain whatsoever.
Well, it's like how I feel about the Young Turks. Like I think they're awful.
I agree.
And they chose to align themselves with all these different left. Now they're a lot bigger and more impactful than Dave Rubin, right? They're a whole network. And
I don't like the Young Turks.
I'm not saying you do. What I'm saying is that that is a person, they have aligned themselves with everyone who's on the left at all. I don't believe that Dave Rubin has. I can accept the fact that he's made a business decision to get some money from the entire spectrum of the right. I will not disagree with that point. I think that's a fair point, and I personally don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Personally. That's my opinion. I don't have a problem with people doing. I read. I don't know if it was you who posted about Joe Rogan the other day, but on Twitter, was that you who was posting this stuff about Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, like I think Joe Rogan. I don't feel the same way that you do about Joe Rogan, but at the end of the day, I don't really care about what these people have to do to make some money, because at the end of the day, the way that I look at it is when you break down. I know in one of your videos you mentioned the X percentage of his guests were right wing. Well, I don't think that was a true. That was very lumped. That was very lumped into one side, because I have a list of guests that I would not consider right wing at all, and it's almost half. It's not half. It's a good quarter of the guests that are not right wing. And then within the right wing, there's a very wide range of these people. And I think the reason that the other thing I wanted to say is I think the reason that Dave Rubin goes on some of these things like Stephen Molyneux and all these people, Libtard and all these people, is because he is trying to live up to his word about free speech, and that he's trying to prove to people that he's not scared to go and put his face and name on these things in the name of free speech. And that's that. And again, we can have differing opinions, and that's fine and fair. But
okay, but
at the end of the day, I don't think my point is invalid.
Oh, well, here's the problem with that idea is that he's choosing who he's going to talk to, right? He's choosing to go to talk to InfoWars, and he's being very friendly with them, and he's treating them like you're great, and he's being very sort of positive about his whole approach to those people. And he's very consciously going on InfoWars. He's not going on Chapo.
How many times has he been on InfoWars?
He's talked to, he invited Paul Watson on his show, and he's spoken positively about Paul Watson. And he went on Alex Jones' show, and he's also tweeted, favorable stuff about conspiracy theories.
I would say that the amount of press he's given InfoWars and Alex Jones is a microscopic piece of what he's done.
Okay, but I'm on a larger point here. So he chooses where he puts his attention.
That's right.
And he's a sentient human being. He can listen to people and critically evaluate what they're saying and say, what does this make sense, what they're saying? Let me research this person's views. Let me go on Google and say, what articles has this guy written? How can I challenge him intellectually? How can I present?
That's not what Dave Rubin does. And that's what he claims to do.
Okay, so what he's doing is he's going to all these right-wingers and he's blowing them. He's giving them a nice shiatsu massage and agreeing with them on every single point. So what he's doing is not free speech. It's basically being a megaphone for his guests, right?
Well, yeah, lots of people. There's Sam Harris and Rita Panahi and Julie Linares and Melissa Chen. These are all people who are not right-wing. Faisal Saeed Al-Muhtar. These guys are not right-wing at all. Shermer, Don Lemon.
Well, Shermer is right wing.
Shermer's not right wing.
He is right wing.
Did he vote Trump?
He probably voted for the Libertarian because he's libertarian. But my point is that he's not engaging in free speech. He's not engaging with the ideas of these people.
He's giving people a platform to express their free speech. That's the purpose of the show. But for Dave Rubin to express his free speech.
Oh, but he is the curator. He is the curator of this museum. and the museum has a bunch of pictures that are all, of Adolf Hitler, right? I mean,
no.
But they are all right-wing pictures. They're all right-wing.
They're not all right-wing. So like that's a generic thing.
Okay, excuse me. The general tenor of his show is to promote right-wing ideas.
And the general tenor of his show is to not promote the left.
Right. It's to attack the left and promote the right.
Promote the left blindly, because he is from the left. He worked for the Young Turks. He was part of in my opinion, a poisonous progressive ideology, and he's trying to escape from that. And this is his working
by being much worse. By being much worse. So that's not good. It's like the Young Turks are kind of bad and they're kind of sloppy, and they actually employ people who are conspiracy theorists like Jimmy Dore. The Young Turks are very bad. But that doesn't mean that you go and you say, hey, you know what else is bad? InfoWars. Let's balance it out by being bad on both sides.
InfoWars. But like InfoWars is not a major part of his success.
Okay, but those are some of the people he indulges. He indulges this super right-wing,
again, you keep saying that over and over again. Like he indulges super right wing and conspiracy theorists and InfoWars. Well, he's never had Alex Jones on his show, and he's had Paul Joseph Watson on his show one time, and he's been on InfoWars one time. He's not.
You're making excuses for him. Okay, but he is not engaging in a totally open and free speech forum. He is engaging in spreading a specific narrative about politics, and it's very intentional, and he chooses to have those people on. If he was like a mainstream conservative Republican and he talked to Paul Joseph Watson, he would be very tough in opposing his views, because Paul Joseph Watson was a 9/11 truther. And if you're a conservative, like you're Bill Kristol, you're Ben Shapiro, you're a real conservative, you're going to attack somebody who's a 9/11 truther. You're going to say, hey, your ideas are wrong. You have said stuff that's totally not factual.
And that's why he's not a true conservative, nor is he an alt-righter. You're
sort of confusing yourself here, because you're saying, so the tenor of his show, all of his interviews, all of his giving a megaphone to people, it's all directed towards attack the left and give the megaphone to people on the right, from the super extreme to the very conservative. Okay.
Well, not only those people.
Mostly those people. Let's say 80%, 80 to 90% maybe. And that makes you right wing. And you agreed on that point before, I think.
I think he is right wing, but I guess
to me, if you're a good interviewer, if you're doing this job well, what you would do is you would really think about the counter arguments to people who you bring on your show, and you would ask them tough questions, and you would learn, and you would see their views challenged in a real way. So that's why he's bad at his job. But if he chooses to do his show in this way, which is not necessarily wrong, but if he chooses to be a guy who just agrees with people, and he brings on people who have ridiculous beliefs, that he is essentially endorsing those beliefs, because he's putting that into the world with the imprimatur of, this is a guy I respect, and I invited to come to my show, and I didn't challenge him at all. And in effect, no matter what his philosophy is, his effect is that he's promoting the very, very far right ideas of his far right guests, who make up a significant portion of his the panoply of people he brings on.
So you keep going back to this very far right. So like we talked about before, there are some people that he has had on his show that are very far right, alt right, conspiracy theorist people like Cernovich, Paul Joseph Watson, Lauren Southern, and Milo Yiannopoulos. There's 4 people of his 60 guests that are like this extreme right, like not valid reporters.
I know there's more than that. There's more than that.
Okay, like who? Name me. This is where I want to get to. This is where I keep saying you keep saying these.
Tommy Sotomayor.
Okay, Tommy Sotomayor is not he's like another YouTuber. I don't hate Tommy Sotomayor or whatever his name is, Tommy Sotomayor. I don't hate what he says. He's not an alt-righter.
He said
he's a pro-Trumper.
He's a pro-Trumper, and he said that Jews could have avoided the Holocaust, and they chose to die in the Holocaust.
Well, that's a stupid thing to say. So again, I don't write down everything that these people say. But But now we're 5 people. So when you say that his show promotes the far right and the alt right, I have trouble accepting that as truth because
another. Okay, well, he interviews a lot of people who are beyond the pale, and if you interviewed someone like Lauren Southern and you didn't push back, that shows a profound, that is profoundly bad. And those might be 10 examples of that.
Okay, so I feel
I stipulate to that. Stipulate to that fact. I'm not done talking. Stipulate to that fact. That's true. But he also brings on a ton of people who are very doctrinaire, libertarian, Ayn Rand objectivist types, because he has this partnership with Learn Liberty, which is a libertarian think tank funded by the Koch brothers. And that's another sort of bucket of his political views. And he's promoting for money these very extreme version of libertarianism to his audience and calling it liberalism. So it's not just that he's promoting the very far right, the alt-right. That's one problem I have with him. But what he's also doing is he's promoting the very doctrinaire, fundamentalist form of libertarianism. So it's not like his show is completely 100%, the alt-right, jam band hour, but it's partially that, and it shouldn't be that whatsoever. It should not give one moment to bringing on a conspiracy theorist and just washing his balls. It shouldn't be 1 minute of that, because that is promoting ideas that are stupid and have no merit.
But the thing is,
you shouldn't spend 1 minute on your show promoting someone.
Do you believe in free speech?
Yes, but his show is not the public square. He's choosing people, and
he can choose whoever he wants to choose.
But he chooses a very specific set of people.
And I don't think so. I think he has 60 guests. 15% are super right. 15% are right. 15% are center left, center right, middle of the road type of people. 15% are ex-Muslims, and 15% are famous celebrity types. So, to me, this isn't a guy pushing a hard right agenda. And what I was going to mention earlier is one of the things that I think Rubin does well is he does let the people just go. And I know you mentioned in one of your videos where you said something along the lines of, well, Dave Rubin always says that he's going to let a person talk, and if they want to hang themselves with the rope that he gives them, then that's up to them. But I do feel like a lot of times I'll hear these people talk, like Lauren Southern, for example, who's a person that I never really took seriously. She comes on the Rubin Report, and a lot of things she said on the show, I was like, well, this girl's just crazy. And it was great that he just let her talk and let her say these things that didn't really make any sense, instead of having these 6-minute, finely edited YouTube videos where she can get her point across. I think that is a strength of Dave Rubin. I think that is why his show is good and important. Okay, but you're sort of shifting from a empirical sense of what we're talking about. Is what are Rubin's politics, to a normative lens? Is it okay what he's doing? But you don't agree with his politics, of course. Well, I'm not. Regardless of whether you agree with his politics or not, what he does is he invites people who are right wing or criticizing the left onto his show. And I would say it's more fair to say he brings people that are critical of the left, because I think let's take the counter example. Suppose Rubin had a show that was left wing. Yeah. And he brought on people like, let's say he brought on Louise Mensch, and he talked about how, Trump is about to be indicted and about to be arrested for high crimes and misdemeanors. And she was making no sense. And he just nodded along and said, yeah, Louise Mensch, you're totally right. And she was spouting conspiracy theories about Trump and Russia that were totally based on nothing. And he's like, yep, I totally agree. That's great. I wouldn't like that. And let's say he brought on a person who was an ISIS sympathizer. And he said, you know what? I'm not an ISIS sympathizer. And actually Islam, it's a totally peaceful religion. And there's no, fundamentalist Islam problem at all. And, we just need to sort of hold hands and, be friends. There's nothing to talk about when it comes to extremist Islam. And he said nothing. And he had all kinds of people who were on the left who were totally unreasonable and had, no, credibility whatsoever. And he invited them on his show. I guarantee you would not like that show
You would not
Of
like
course,
it.
I wouldn't like that show because he doesn't bring on people that have no credibility whatsoever.
He does. He brings on Cernovich and
90% of his guests have some pretty good credibility.
Okay, but if he brought on, and then he brought on a bunch of people who are the most left-wing college professors in America, who are like, Marxist-Leninist professors at Oberlin. And they sort of talk down to everyone about, their Marxist-Leninist view of
Weinstein's a pretty left-wing guy. Like, he's a hardcore left-winger.
Well, but he's
a hardcore left-winger.
The reason he was on the show was to criticize the campus left.
The point is that he brought on a person who is a hardcore left-winger who, if I didn't know Brett Weinstein, if I didn't know about this Evergreen thing and I heard his politics, I would say this guy's a nutcase. But now, because he was on Dave Rubin's show and he told his story and I got to listen to it, I'm going to be more willing to listen to his crazy left-wing ideas because he at least has a perspective that I think is worth listening to. And
what you're saying essentially is that you like the people you like people you agree with who are telling you stuff that you agree with.
Well, no, what I'm saying is I like the fact that Dave Rubin's show has allowed me to listen to people who I never would have listened to I never would have listened to half the people that were on a show. I learned about all these people. And then once I hear them on Dave Rubin get a puff piece interview and give their perspective on things, then I'll go out and I'll research them more and learn more about them and then determine if I really do want to support them. I don't go out there and support Prager. Don't go out there and support Beck or D'Souza.
Well, wouldn't it be so much more edifying if during the interview he asked the probing, tough questions?
No, I don't think so. But that's okay because now we're talking about what he should do with his own show, and neither of us should be telling him what to do.
Okay, but I think on the empirical question, we can agree he's on the right, and he has a lot of connections to the extreme right. Can we agree with that?
I disagree with that. I think you're keep grinding. I don't think he has a lot of connections to the extreme right. I think he has connections to the extreme
well, first, he is on the right, you would say.
I would say, based on his transition from working at the Young Turks to being a homosexual man living in one of the most left-leaning cities in North America, that he is a lot more to the right than he was before. He voted libertarian. He has been talking with the likes of Cernovich and Larry Elder, and I think that conversation with Larry Elder the first time was sort of a breaking point for him, and I think that's a great moment for everybody to watch. That first conversation he had with Larry Elder when he talked about white privilege and all that type of stuff, and Larry Elder commented back to him, and he was like, "Oh, blah blah blah."
Well, he's dumb. He's dumb, so he got stumped by someone. That's not surprising.
I don't, and like I told you before we talked, I don't sit there and listen to what Dave Rubin says and think, I like his guest.
Perhaps you are someone who is very open-minded and does a lot of research and can use his crappy content and use it as a source to learn more about things, but you can still, you could look at the Donald Trump Reddit page and learn about how awful the alt-right is. He doesn't speak for how good the Donald Trump Reddit page is, right? So it's possible to take a show that's really right-wing and use it as research material to understand the right. But going back to my point, what we were talking about before, you'd agree he's on the right. Like we've sort of established he's on the right.
I like to number things. So on a scale of 0 to 10, okay, 10 being the most right-wing person that exists in the space today, who would be whom? Who's the most right-wing person that exists, in your opinion? Like
in U.S. politics?
Or not just politics. I'm talking about like in the space of commenting, like YouTube and podcasts and not the mainstream media, but who's the guy? Like, is it Molyneux or is it Larry out? Like Paul Joseph Watson, Cernovich? Like, who are we talking about here? Who's the worst right person?
I would say the people who are the really
the alt-righters. Like what's his name? Richard Spencer.
Maybe there's people to the right of Richard Spencer who are like, I would say people who sent me pictures of gas chambers during the election. Those people are the furthest right.
Those are like the worst of the worst that are such a small, useless group of people that have such bad views that nobody in their right mind takes them seriously. And then we have the other end of the spectrum, which is the left side, which is whatever, the most left people that we can think of, like the hardcore Leninists that think that Venezuela is the best country in the world type of thing, okay, or whatever. So we have those people. Now, if you're to ask me where Rubin is, I would say he is like right in the middle of that. He's not an 8. He's not an 8.
Okay, so let's politically break him down. So on economic policy, he's very far right. You would agree?
I would say that he is every day that he talks to more people and he gets older and he understands the way that economics works. He's becoming more right wing. Yes.
Okay. Well, he wants a flat tax at 15%, which is radically right wing. He's against environmental regulation. He wants to get rid of regulations in a sort of a slapdash way.
I can't comment. I would have to think about it. I don't know if he's ever said he wants to get rid of regulation.
He said that many times. He wants to get rid of regulations. So he goes to objectivist conferences, which is Ayn Rand. So he is a far right wing. He's a super libertarian. So on the economics part of the spectrum, he's very right wing. Although he's not an orthodox libertarian, because he's anti-immigration in some ways. He's at least sympathetic to that point of view, and he's he's not against Trump's protectionism. He's not against, he's not pro NAFTA. He's not pro international organizations. So on some ways he's not libertarian. He's not libertarian on the borders. He doesn't want open borders. So he's kind of, right wing, but not doctrinaire libertarian on economic policy.
He's definitely right wing when it comes to economic stuff.
And he doesn't want he's against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. He's against He's against the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits racial discrimination in public accommodations.
And I don't know if he's ever said that either, but
he said that. He said that.
So he said that he's against the 1964 Civil Rights.
Yes. And when it came to Trump and Clinton, which was a choice between a far-right radical agenda, he called that far-right radical agenda centrist, and he basically supported Trump in the election tacitly because he was very anti-Hillary, and he downplayed Trump's danger. So he was basically a Trump fellow traveler in the election. So
he didn't vote Trump.
He didn't vote Trump, but I mean, he was in California, so his vote was irrelevant anyway. So when it came to the election, he was more critical of Hillary than Trump. Let's agree on that. And since Trump has been elected, he has not criticized him one iota, basically. And he's attacked the left for their criticism of Trump, and he's downplayed every single and he sort of identified with the Trump. He said Trump was a big win for our side. So that's another sort of check mark on the right wing sort of. So, and then on social issues, that's where you can say, okay, on social issues, maybe he's more centrist because he's pro-choice. He's somewhat pro-gay rights. He doesn't really talk about it ever, and he was fine with Neil Gorsuch, who's anti-gay rights and on the Supreme Court. So he's kind of wishy-washy on those things, and he's actually not. He's not open borders. He's for closed borders, and he's never criticized Trump for the crackdown on immigration, and he's never criticized the wall too much. So I would say the
wall will never happen. That's just a stupid political ploy. That's not a real thing. But nonetheless, he has not criticized the wall.
Right. So I would say on the economic half of the spectrum, he's about as far right as any politician in America. He's like Ron Paul or something on that part of the spectrum. On the social side of the spectrum, he's pro-pot, he's pro-abortion. So I would, on the spectrum of 1 being the most liberal and 10 being the most conservative, he's like a 8.5.
Yeah, like I don't agree that he's that much. So then this is where, when you talked about when you had your discussion on the podcast with the polite conversations, I believe it was called.
Yeah.
When you said that it bothers him when he talks to Cernovich about being this new center. Right. I don't think Cernovich is part of a new center. So I think I definitely agree with that. I'm not that idiotic to believe that Cernovich is part of a new center. I don't believe that. But I do believe that people like Dave Rubin are part of something that is that cannot be defined within our current political spectrum. And before we talked on this podcast, I sort of laid out a little bit how my political alterations as I've gotten older, I'm married, I have kids, and I have more responsibilities for all these things. I have become a lot more quote unquote right wing, but I do believe that there are so many things that I believe, like I don't believe that Dave Rubin, if you ask him about foreign policy stuff, it would be an extremely left-wing foreign policy. I believe he would not be pro-intervention and all these types of things that are typically right of the political spectrum.
Well, and that's another sort of thing to talk about, because there actually are people who are on the far right who are isolationists.
I know, Trump said he was before the election, like
Pat Buchanan, like Ron Paul, and they're isolationists, but they're not internationalists. They're not in favor of the UN and NATO and human rights globally. So he sort of fits in the paleoconservative box.
Well, I don't think so. I think he is for rights for people around the world, and that's why he gives people like Ali Rizvi and Sarah Haider and Ayaan Hirsi Ali and a great platform to speak about why it's important to give those people rights internationally.
Well, at the same time, he's never criticized Trump for anything he's done.
Okay, and I'm not. I find this whole Trump thing. It's so Trump is so bad. Okay, Trump is like, he's ridiculous. He is like, I don't know how anyone can not agree he's the worst president of all time, and he's only been in job for 7 months or 6 months or whatever.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Okay, and I don't get why. Well, sorry, I understand the argument that you make that he's not criticizing Trump enough, and I'll grant you that, and that's fair, and we can then just put that aside and say that's fine because he's not doing it as much as I think he should be. I would say, look at a guy, he should be criticizing Trump more, and I think people like Ben Shapiro are the people that he needs to be modeling his criticism of Trump more, because Ben Shapiro will criticize Trump at I listen to his podcast every day. Every single day, he criticizes Trump. When he does something good, he'll give him props. That doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, but Ben Shapiro is also, he's a very partisan Republican. He's very conservative. He supported Ted Cruz.
Okay, but the whole point is you're claiming that Dave Rubin is a very right-wing person.
Yes.
Okay. Dave Rubin, I don't believe is very right-wing. I believe Dave Rubin falls into this new species, this new breed of people that have a lot of right-leaning tendencies, but are really not actually right-wing, because he doesn't believe in any of the religious aspects. So he's a communist when it comes to religion, in the sense of that he doesn't believe in any religion. So you cannot be an 8 on the conservative scale if you're an atheist and don't believe in religion. So right away that takes.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
Okay, well that's cool. That's why we have these awesome discussions. And I think that if you talk to Dave Rubin,
that's identity politics again.
What do you mean?
Well, you say I'm an atheist, I'm gay, so I can't be conservative. Well,
no, I said that if you're a hardcore conservative, if you're an 8 to 8.5 on our virtual scale that we've created in this discussion, that means how could you be an 8.5 if you don't believe in the religious part of the right wing, which is a very part of Donald Trump's politics. No, I don't think Donald Trump is religious at all, but his party is.
Well, his actions in office have been to prop up the Christian right, and
why do you think he would do that?
Because he's a Republican. Because
that's not why he's doing it. Because to Donald Trump, this election was a game, and he wanted to win the game, and he did not have one iota.
But
so he needed the Christian right to win. So he catered.
But being completely without principle is not like a feather in his cap.
No, right? It's not. But what I'm saying.
But if you actually really cared about secularism in the United States, you would be very much aghast at Trump being in the White House, at Pence being in the White House, at
I
far
would be not
right.
Trump, but Pence, yes.
No, Trump's actions in the White House should dismay you severely because he wants to pass the Johnson Amendment or get rid of the Johnson Amendment. He wants to, really
willing to do that to make his supporters happy.
Okay, but regardless of why he's doing it, forget it. Take out the intentionality out of it completely because the man is basically mentally ill. So it's hard to even know what he's thinking. But
it's impossible to know what he's thinking.
Fair. So what is he doing? It is a very big. If you care about gay rights, if you care about secularism, if you care about preventing the, if you care about women getting their access to birth control, if you care about all those sort of secular issues, all those, issues that an atheist liberal would care about, you would be aghast at the right-wing agenda, the right-wing Christian fundamentalist agenda that is being pushed through in Washington right now. You'd be aghast.
That's why I would have voted for. That's why I would have voted for Hillary Clinton if I was American and if I lived in America. But
right. So the fact that Rubin has not said one word about those things and has basically been an apologist for Trump, and he said Trump actually will be a centrist Democrat, basically. He said that before Trump got elected, and now Trump has acted as the most right-wing conservative president in the modern history of the United States, and Rubin hasn't said one word. He has not said one thing. He's not criticized Trump on any of those things. He didn't criticize Gorsuch one word because and regardless of why he was doing it, he doesn't really care about those issues. He doesn't care about a woman's right to choose very much. He doesn't care about having liberals on the Supreme Court very much. If he doesn't utter one word and doesn't bring those issues to the forefront. So he might care about those things in some pocket of his brain, theoretically. He's not willing to put his ass on the line with his audience and say, you know what, Trump's bad on this issue. He's not willing. He doesn't have the sack to lose Patreon money to criticize Trump on those issues, on foreign policy and on Trump's putting Christian religious fundamentalist dogma into our public policy. So if you don't care enough to actually bring those issues up, you don't actually believe in them very strongly. It's an excuse. It's an excuse for why you're a liberal, and you're not living it. And that's the problem with him on those issues. He talks a big game, but he never will stand up to his supporters on those things. So maybe in theory he's pro-choice. He's not going to stand up for those issues one iota. So we could talk about his whatever is inside of his brain and his heart of hearts. I don't care about that. What I care about is what his contribution to the public discourse is on those issues. And
I guess, you know what? I really don't care what his contribution to the public discourse is. I don't look at what type of credentials does Dave Rubin have that anybody should be listening to what he thinks about the public discourse. What I think is important about Dave Rubin is the people that he brings on who do have the credentials. And I think that the big thing about what Dave Rubin does, I think better than most people who do have a platform, is he just does let the people talk. Now, we can have it forever about whether we agree with the people he brings on or not. But the point is, Dave Rubin was a pot-smoking, terrible university-going, left-wing wannabe politician that turned into a comedian that did, his opinion about politics shouldn't influence anybody. And the fact that he brings on people... and I don't look to him like that. The fact that he brings on a guy, for example, like Larry Elder, and who have a lot of experience in the Republican dynamic, who I didn't know about, but I do have a lot of respect for now. Dinesh D'Souza, I've watched all his debates that he had on YouTube with all these people.
Disgusting person. Reprehensible human being.
Loathe him. But yet, when he went on that and he talked, I was like, okay, well, maybe he's not as bad as I originally thought, though I don't like him. Prager and Beck, don't like them. Southern, she can say what she wants. She just buried herself her own hole.
Okay.
All these things. So I think it's important that there are people out there that don't try to interject their politics.
But he does. He does.
Not completely, though.
We've been over. Okay. here's my perspective. If you have a talk show and you can choose who you want to have on your talk show, and you can choose what sort of influence you have on the world, you can pick people who agree with you, or you can pick people who are very smart. You can pick people who have a lot of great journalistic background, and they know special facts, and they can present their opinion in a very articulate way. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't agree with them, you like them. Like, there are conservatives I like a lot, personally. There's like moderate. Just curious. There's one libertarian I think is brilliant. This guy Richard Epstein is a law professor.
Okay.
I think he's insanely far right, but he's such a brilliant guy, and he can discuss the issues of economics and philosophy and law in a very brilliant way. Or another example of someone who's conservative I like. Glenn Loury is this guy. He's kind of a moderate.
Love Glenn Loury. He was on Sam Harris. He was great.
Yeah, he was a neoconservative in the 80s. Or the original neoconservative, Irving Kristol. I think the guy was absolutely brilliant. And he made a lot of criticisms of the left in the 1970s that were so intelligent and so perceptive. And I don't agree with him completely or even largely, but he's a person on the right I respect a lot. So you can use your platform, you can use your voice and your effort in journalism to do whatever you want. And what Rubin chooses to do is that he chooses to bring on a lot of right-wing clowns, a lot of libertarian fundamentalists. He chooses to put out the output of his show, the product, the sum total of everything on his show, is to prop up a political ideology of the extreme right and extreme libertarians and just the very conservative people in America, the Shapiros, the D'Souza's, and present them in a positive light. And he doesn't present the liberal side in a positive light at all. He attacks them a lot. And so the sum total of what he's doing is he's pushing terrible ideas that are absolutely illiberal, wrong, and taking our country in an awful direction. It's the Trump phenomenon. It's what Trump's doing to our country. It's the fact that poor people in America might be losing their health care. We might have 23 million Americans who are losing their health care because of Trump and these right-wing Republican libertarian sort of types who don't want to pay taxes. So the sum total of his show is to promote these things that are very terrible. And he does it by partially lying about his own views and calling himself a liberal. So I find that to be absolutely reprehensible. And then when it comes to his own commentary, he is a complete moron. And everything he says is this sort of platitude bromide of, well, you know what? Executive orders are bad. We should have federalism. Why can't we just have free speech? It's, the left is bad. It's all these sort of vague, like cliches. There's no actual engagement with, the issues of the day in a specific, intelligent way. And many people can do that. I can do that. Sam Harris can do that on a lot of issues. On some issues you can't, on some you can. There are lots of great journalists. There's lots of great thinkers in the world who are putting out great ideas and are engaging with what's going on in the newspaper every day and are presenting, maybe a moderate view, maybe a conservative view, but they're doing it with fidelity to the facts, and they're doing it intelligently and well. Rubin is doing it with no fidelity to the facts, with no honesty about what he's doing, and he's trying to basically smuggle far-right and libertarian ideology to an audience of people who are very impressionable and young and don't necessarily know politics very well. So
I don't know. I think you're making an assumption about who his audience is. I don't think you have any demographics about who are the people consuming his YouTube.
I know when I criticize Dave Rubin and someone defends him, usually it's somebody who has a Pepe avatar and they retweeted Paul Watson 75 times and they call you a cuck. So and you look at like where is he popular on social media? It's on the far right. Like, Don Jr. defended him, right?
Well, like, again, we're talking about people in the same space. We're talking about guys like, let's talk about the big names of this modern media outlook. We're talking about guys like you mentioned, Joe Rogan is probably the number one person in the whole realm of new media. He does unbelievable numbers. He does all these amazing things. He has guests from every part of the political spectrum.
Yeah, he's terrible too.
He's not. I think Joe Rogan is one of the most important voices that we have.
Well, he's one of the worst. Important in that way. One of the worst.
Again, we can do that another time if you want. But I don't believe that Joe Rogan is the worst. I believe Joe Rogan is actually the best. And I believe that people like Joe Rogan, who are willing to have conversations with people they agree with or don't agree with on their podcast and have an honest conversation without trying to totally push their opinion on it, is important. Sam Harris is, as much as I idolize that guy, I think he is one of the most important minds on earth.
But you said honest. But
pardon me?
Isn't it dishonest to say that you're a liberal and be very conservative?
Well, I think he is, like I mentioned.
Isn't it dishonest to say that you're a liberal and have a show whose output and space within the media is between the conservative right and the extreme far right?
Well, see, that's a matter of an opinion. I don't believe he's that far right. I believe he is a person who was a hardcore progressive leftist for most of his life. He worked at Young Turks. Okay.
Well, when he was at the Young Turks, he wasn't actually a very. I mean, can we agree that he's a moron?
Well, I don't. Like I mentioned,
his opinions are very vapid and they're not backed up by a lot of thought.
Rubin to consume his.
But let's sort of stipulate that we agree on that.
Yeah, we agree on that. Like that's all.
He was not a left-wing thinker who changed his mind. He's kind of like he's like parasailing through other people's ideas with like just wherever the wind blows, he'll sort of go in that direction.
Well, I think that speaks to the world we're in today, because the fact that we have this ability to a guy in New York, a guy in Ottawa to get together, meet on Twitter, talk about these issues. There is so much information out there. How old is he? He's like 40 years. He just turned 40, I think. He didn't grow up with all the stuff like you and I did, and we're still like kids nowadays.
He's thoroughly uneducated, which is part of the problem.
It is part of the problem, and that's why I believe he does his job very well, and he is very good at his job.
It's the blind leading the blind. It's a guy who doesn't know anything, who's sort of pumping out all this like putrid bile from people like Tommy Sotomayor and Mike Cernovich without any curation, without any.
You're only focusing on the people that.
Okay, let's talk about the people who are less extreme. So let's go through his list of guests. This guy, Austin Peterson.
Austin Peterson.
So this guy, he came in second in the Libertarian presidential nomination.
Okay, yes, I remember him.
He is extremely far right. He's a libertarian extremist, basically.
But don't you think it's a good thing that if, let's say, there was an 18-year-old kid that never heard of what a libertarian was, to at least hear what the libertarian is? Don't you think that if you say Dave Rubin's not educated, is it not good for him to educate people on all the information, good or bad?
No, I'd rather have someone who was smart and researched Austin Peterson and said, what are the strengths of this guy's case? What are the weaknesses? What has he said that's kind of strange? Let me research libertarian philosophy and see what the counter arguments to it are, and be able to push back on him and have an intelligent back and forth discussion. Not necessarily like I'm going to challenge you and give you my opinion, but give you the tough questions that a objective,
so
judge
this is just a discussion about how we think he should operate his show. I'm okay with how he does it. So he does
it very poorly.
Well, I disagree. I like the way he does it, and the reason I like the way he does it is because I don't have to listen to an uneducated person's opinion. I can listen to people who I want to learn more about, like a guy like Peter Boghossian. I didn't know who he was. I wanted to hear him talk. It was interesting, and then I went and I read all about Peter Boghossian.
But part of the problem is that he is so uneducated that he'll bring on these people who present a very specific ideology. It could be intentional. He brings on a lot of people who have this range of very far conservative to extreme radical conservative.
Okay, so we've already gone over those people. We both agree that he's had a lot of really right-wing people on. We agree that he's had some real, true party conservative, real Republicans, okay? True Republicans he's had.
Okay,
but there's lots of other people on there that are not any of those things. And that is part
of... Okay, but if 10% of your output is not bad, you still suck. That's a 10%. That's not a failing 10%.
But even the conversation, did you not find that conversation with Horowitz like mind-blowing, the story that he told about getting that woman killed?
I didn't listen to that one.
You heard that great?
I didn't listen.
It was a really awesome conversation. Okay. The Lauren Southern one was the lowest.
Okay, but I guess the overall thing is that you're not really holding him to any standard of behavior. And
what's the standard of a YouTuber? He's a pretty good, he's a pretty high up there quality wise. I don't find him like you do dishonest. I don't find him dishonest.
Isn't it wrong for him to say that he's liberal?
I don't believe so, because I mentioned this in the notes after reading your Medium article. I really think that your graph was really good.
You said he was on the right.
No, I know. So your graph was really good. Okay, I thought that graph you did was a good definition. I think there's basically two types of liberals out there. There's the liberal that most people hear. They think liberal. They think left-leaning person. That in the negative, they think identity politics, socialism, bigger government. That's the negative interpretation of the word liberal. But then the positive terms are things like tolerance, acceptance, good social programs, government doing things for the people. That's the positive side. Dave Rubin claims he's a classical liberal, like you say. He says that over like almost every episode. He says, "I'm a classical liberal. I'm a classical liberal."
But he also says, to be fair, he also says, "I have the same views as I did when I supported Michael Dukakis and when I was a Democrat. Democrats have just moved to the left more, and Democrats are all extreme left wingers." And that's not true. That's not true. That's a lie. What he
I
is?
Don't think that's a lie.
No. Come on, man. So
I do believe that as time has gone on, the left have gone more left. I believe that somebody like
you say Hillary Clinton is extreme left.
No, but and there's another thing you said earlier, when Donald Trump was running for the campaign, and Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump was happening, a lot of the views that Hillary Clinton had about foreign policy were more right wing than Donald Trump was saying.
But that's another thing with the sort of ideological spectrum on foreign policy. That's not really. I mean, Pat Buchanan was an isolationist.
I know. Like
Charles Lindbergh, but
fan of Pat Buchanan growing up. Okay.
Oh no.
I know.
But the point is that liberal has two meanings. It means on the left, and it means you believe in limited government. You believe in not regulating the economy too much. You believe in all those things, right? It's the
the personal liberty of people.
It's a type of libertarianism, classical liberalism. So everyone is somewhere on the spectrum for those two things, right? I'm not like a Marxist. I'm not a libertarian. I'm in the middle. So what Rubin is doing is he's saying Democrats used to be classical liberals back in the day. And is that true?
Well, I don't think
he said that. Democrats used to be liberals. They used to be classical liberals back in the...
They said they used to be liberal. He's never said they used to be classical liberal.
But he's implied that very strong. He said that. He's implied this very strongly. I'm pretty sure. He said, Martin Luther King would be a conservative now because he was a liberal. He was for freedom and all that sort of stuff. But the thing is, Democrats were always the left-wing party in America since, FDR, since, the Democrats, in modern history, Democrats have been the left-wing party. So to attack the Democrats for not being libertarian is completely incoherent and ahistorical and wrong.
Well, I don't think that's what he's saying. And
it is. It is what he's saying. He's trying to confuse people.
I don't think he's doing that. I honestly don't believe.
What if he just said, I used to be a liberal, like Democrats are, a liberal on the left, and then I became a mix of conservative and libertarian? I would accept him a lot more if he said that, but he doesn't say that. And the fact that he portrays that and says that he's a centrist and he brings on people of different... No, he brings on people who are very conservative or psychopathically far-right nuts. So
or people that don't appreciate the identity politics of the left.
Okay,
all three of those
I don't appreciate like if I was on a college campus, if I was at Oberlin or I was at Evergreen State, I'd be like, holy crap, these kids are so stupid and left-wing and crazy. I believe in capitalism. I believe that the United States is a good force in the world. I'm kind of a center-left moderate in a lot of ways.
Well, but the left.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that I like Ben Shapiro, who's a very far-right conservative, just because he criticizes the people who are the most crazy left. And the thing is, what Rubin does is he tries to intimate that the people who are on the left are like the Antifa, like anarchist protesters, and the college left-wing people who hate Hillary Clinton and are, Marxist Leninists. Those are the people who are the left. And it's completely wrong, because the left is mostly people who are basically, like Hillary Clinton or Obama or Justin Trudeau or Emmanuel Macron but that's again, that's the left in America for the most part. So that's another part. He is so dishonest about that. He's so ignorant about politics that he allows the right wing to speak through him, regardless of what his intention is. He allows them to speak through him, and his show is propaganda in that sense. It's propaganda where he pretends to be a liberal, and and his output is to attack the left and promote the right. I think we've been over this, like we've been around the circle on this.
But that's the whole thing, is that at the end of the day, the problem with your problem with Rubin is you feel he's being dishonest.
Yes.
I don't feel he's being honest.
Well, then it's an incredible accident that all of his shows are, almost all of his content and all of his Twitter is all attacking the left in the midst of the Trump presidency. It must be some coincidence. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, and think about this. Can you agree on this point? If Rubin said Donald Trump is the worst president in history, he is a complete sham and he should resign, would he lose subscribers and would he lose Patreon money?
I don't think he would that much.
Of course he would. Of course he would.
I don't think it'd be as bad.
If he went hard against Trump and had on David Frum and Sam Harris, who are centrist or right wing, and attacked.
Wait, time out. You said Sam Harris is what?
Frum is right wing.
Frum?
Yeah, David Frum is right wing. So he's a conservative. He's a speechwriter for.
Yeah, but Frum is a conservative, but Sam Harris is not a conservative.
Right. So if he had on people who were centrists or right wingers who attacked Trump, and Rubin really spoke strongly against Trump, he would lose a lot of his subscribers.
So what happened when Sam Harris talked trash about Trump? What happened to his subscribers?
Well, I don't know if Sam Harris has been on the show in the Trump era at all.
I don't think he has, but on Sam Harris,
a lot of what Rubin had Sam Harris talk about when he was on was actually Hillary's actually pretty bad, and she's allowing Trump to win because she's not talking.
You listen to Sam Harris podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you remember the episode he did where he brought on, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was David Frum, to talk about how bad Hillary is?
No, that was Andrew Sullivan.
That's right. And
I mean, that's terrible. I mean, like,
I know, but the reason he did that was genius, because he brought on a person to talk about how bad Hillary Clinton is, and then he immediately went to, and being that how bad she is, this is how much worse Donald Trump is.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't see that as a great public service, but
that is a great public service. And the discussions that are happening, like you mentioned earlier about the left wing being, Trudeau and you were saying Hillary Clinton and all these things. The left has lost its way, just like the right has lost its way. The entire
the left is a lot better. It's a lot better.
Well, then this is where I agree with Dave Rubin, where there is this new center that's being created, this new area, whether it's center, whether it's leaning right.
Name one person in the new center.
Well, I would say Sam Harris. I would say Dave Rubin. I'd say Joe Rogan. I would say myself. I would say
we agreed that his entire show was right wing.
I know,
but in the new center.
It's traditionally considered right wing. But when we talk about all these people on his show, you definitely like to talk about Steranovich.
I think we've been like over this 15 different times.
But here's the thing, though. I don't believe you're being completely honest about all of his guests. Just because he's against the left doesn't mean he's always for the right. And that's why I believe he exists in this new realm within both spectrums.
Okay.
And that's how I feel. That's how I feel personally. I don't feel like I have a party
but-
that I can be honest that like I definitely am more right now than I am left because I believe much of the problems that we face today, I don't believe Trump is the problem. I believe Trump is the symptom of the problem. He didn't
But
cause
he is a problem though.
he is a problem. He's a symptom. So when you're sick, you have things that are bad on your body. Trump isn't the disease. Trump is a symptom of the disease. And I think that what happened is this last.
Well, no, I mean, this is like blaming the left for like the right has no agency and can do whatever it wants.
The right has tons of problems because the right, when Bush was in power.
I think we've been going on for like almost 2 hours now. Yeah. So I'm gonna.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. This is good. I feel that it was I had a great time. I love having these types of conversations. I don't get to have these types of conversations with the people around here because most people that I know don't want to talk about it. I appreciate you having this conversation with me. And if you ever do want to talk about anything else again, I'm more than willing to come and talk about it.
Well, thank you for putting your point of view across. I guess just to conclude, I feel like you granted a lot of my points about Rubin's guests at the beginning, and you just seem like you like the guy and you want to sort of defend him. And
no, I like the guests he brings on.
You like watching his show, but I don't think you're being very objective in analyzing what the sum total effect of the show is, and you're not sort of holding him to a standard of behavior, which he's a talk show host, and
that's right.
And I think you should expect him not just look at what you were getting from the show, but look at the show in general and say, what is the message of this?
Do you like Bill Maher? Do you like Bill Maher?
He's okay. I don't like Bill Maher that much. I dislike a lot of things he says.
I don't like Bill Maher that much, but I watch his show because I like the guests. I don't care what Bill Maher has to say.
But Bill Maher actually pushes back against people. But just
and I think you should shut up half the time.
Well,
that's my opinion, and that's cool. Yeah, but the whole thing is just this.
I think you are saying you were getting something out of the show as a person of your ideology, but I don't think you're evaluating him in terms of his fairness or the quality of his show in terms of getting the facts straight, the quality of his Twitter, whether it's wrong to tweet at conspiracy theories, right? And he does that, so it's not good.
Again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at a few that I took a few notes about things that you said that I don't want to say not aware, but I can't honestly say that he's against the 1964 Act. I definitely think that I think he put too much weight on his having Paul Joseph Watson and him being on Alex Jones. I think you put too much weight on that. I look more that people like Sarah Hayter.
What you're doing is you're making excuses for him, and you're really cherry picking his output. I guess it's the sum up of how I feel about what you're saying. But I appreciate you talking to me about this. I mean, you seem like you're more sane than the average Rubin fan, but
I'm more like what?
You're more sane than the average fan of Dave.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay, well, it's good talking to you, man. I'm gonna end the show here. All right, take care.